Imagine you're walking along the quiet shore of Somerton Beach at dawn, the sun just beginning to rise over the South Australian coast, and you notice a man in a perfectly pressed suit lying propped against a seawall, legs extended neatly, shoes-shined hands, resting beside him as if he had just paused to enjoy the view, but something feels wrong. He's too still, his position too deliberate. You call out to him, but he doesn't respond. As you inch closer, you realize that he's not sleeping, he's dead. Thus begins one of the most bizarre and enduring mysteries of the 20th century. A real-life puzzle that has stumped detectives, scientists, journalists, and cryptographers for more than 70 years. The case of the Somerton Man, an unknown figure who died under unexplained circumstances on December 1st, 1948, and whose identity remained a mystery until just recently. When police arrived at the scene on that hot summer morning in Adelaide, they found the man to be about 40 to 45 years old, clean-shaven, in excellent physical shape, and dressed formally in a suit and tie. Cryptographers from the Navy and British intelligence examined it but failed to break it. The mystery grew more tantalizing. Why would an unidentified man die with a torn-out poetic phrase in his pocket? And why would that book be linked to a code that even military experts couldn't solve? The trail took another unexpected turn when police traced the book to a woman living in the Glenelg area, Jo Thompson. A nurse and former dancer who had once owned a copy of the Rubaiyat, she denied knowing the Somerton Man. But when investigators showed her a plaster cast of his face, created before his burial, she allegedly turned pale, almost fainted, and refused to look at it again. Her reaction, some believed, betrayed familiarity. Adding to the intrigue, Jo's phone number was found penciled faintly in the book. When asked if she knew anyone who matched the man's description, Jo suggested a man named Alfred Boxall. But police quickly located Boxall alive and well in Sydney with his own copy of the Rubaiyat still intact. This led investigators back to Jo herself. She had had a son, Robin, who bore a striking resemblance to the Somerton Man, especially in his unusually shaped ears and dental structure, a rare anatomical trait called hypodontia. Could Robin have been the dead man's son? Was Jo involved in a tragic romance or a Cold War spy network? Rumors swirled that she had Russian connections and that the Somerton Man may have been a Soviet agent. By now the story had become something out of a novel. Mystery man dies on beach dressed to the nines with no ID. No cause of death, a hidden message in a foreign language, a link to a secret code, and a woman who seemed terrified to talk. Despite years of investigation, the trail went cold. In 1949, the Somerton Man was buried in Adelaide's West Terrace Cemetery under a simple tombstone that read, "Here lies the unknown man who was found at Somerton Beach." First, December 1948. Over the decades, countless theories emerged. Some believed he was a spy, possibly Russian, British, or Australian, eliminated during an intelligence operation. Others suggested he was a jilted lover who took his own life after being rejected. A few believed he died accidentally, perhaps from an exotic poison that science had not yet learned to detect. Meanwhile, amateur detectives and online sleuths kept the story alive for generations, dissecting every clue, studying the code, and trying to identify him. Technology finally caught up with the mystery in the 21st century. In 2021, after years of lobbying by researchers and family history experts, the South Australian government approved the exhumation of the Somerton Man's body to extract DNA. This time, forensic science had a chance. Using hair samples and cutting-edge techniques in genetic genealogy, the same used to identify the Golden State, killer scientists painstakingly constructed a DNA profile. Then, in July 2022, a bombshell dropped. The Somerton Man had likely been identified as Carl Charles Webb, a Melbourne-born electrical engineer and instrument maker, born in 1905. He had no known children and had disappeared from records in the 1940s. But even with a name, the questions remain hauntingly intact. Why was Webb in Adelaide? Was he meeting someone? Did he die by suicide, or was he killed? Why did he have a rare book with a poetic death phrase, a hidden code, and ties to a mysterious woman? Did Jo Thompson know him more intimately than she admitted? Why was he so determined to remove every trace of his identity? Even today, despite breakthroughs in DNA, The enigma clings to the story like fog. The suitcase found at Adelaide railway station, believed to be his, contained oddly marked tools, stenciling brushes, and clothes similar to what he was wearing, but again, with all labels removed. Some say he may have been traveling for work. Others remain convinced of espionage, given the Cold War context, the cryptic code, and the possibility of untraceable poisons like digitalis or strophanthin, both discussed in declassified files of that era. Even the phrase Tamam Shud feels more like a calling card than a suicide note. The case of the Somerton Man isn't just a mystery at S, a story that blurs the lines between reality and noir fiction. It represents the limits of what we know about identity, memory, and motive. A man died on a beach, alone and unrecognized, but his story has lived far beyond his final breath, inviting theories, obsessions, and late-night rabbit holes that stretch across generations. In a world overflowing with digital footprints and social media timelines, the Somerton Man remains a whisper from another era, silent, poised, unsolved. Even with a name on the record now, the truth feels distant, like waves crashing just beyond reach. In the end, all we know for certain is that someone, somewhere, once lived a life that ended quietly on a beach, with two haunting words tucked in a secret pocket. Tamám Shud. There were no signs of struggle or violence on his body. But what puzzled authorities was that he had no identification on him, no wallet, no labels on his clothes, and no luggage. Every single label from his garments had been meticulously removed, as if someone, perhaps even the man himself, wanted to erase any clue of who he was. His pockets contained some coins, a used bus ticket, a half-full box of matches, a comb, a pack of chewing gum, and an unused train ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach. Nothing stood out until the autopsy revealed something more curious. The pathologist discovered that many of his internal organs, including the liver and spleen, were engorged and congested. His stomach contained the remains of a pastry and some blood, leading investigators to suspect poison. Yet, no traces of poison were found in his system, at least, not any that 1948 science could detect. With no identity, no known cause of death, and no missing person reports that matched his description, the man was a ghost. Newspapers began calling him the Unknown Man, and the public was captivated. Weeks later, while re-examining his clothing, police made a startling discovery. A small, hidden fob pocket in the waistband of his trousers contained a tightly rolled scrap of paper, no larger than a thumbnail. On it, printed in an elegant typeface, were just two cryptic words: Tamám Shud. This wasn't English. It turned out to be Persian, and it translated roughly to ended or finished. The phrase appears at the end of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a collection of poems by a 12th century Persian philosopher. The book was known for its themes of fate and the finality of death. It seemed more than a coincidence. Who was this man who carried such a poetic farewell on his person? Police suspected suicide, but the manner of death remained frustratingly elusive. Hoping to trace the origin of the phrase, authorities launched a public appeal to find a copy of the Rubaiyat that might match the scrap of paper. Miraculously, a local man came forward. He claimed that weeks earlier, around the time of the man's death, he had parked his car in Glenelga's seaside suburb near Somerton Beach and found a rare copy of the book lying on the back seat. He thought little of it until he saw the appeal in the newspaper. Inside this book, police found even more puzzles. The final page had been torn out, matching the exact words on the slip of paper found in the dead man's pocket. But more astonishingly, the inside back cover of the book bore a handwritten code, a series of seemingly random letters arranged in 5 lines. Like this: Argo Ababd Mliaoi, Tinpanat Liabaya, Ia Kipsam. No one has ever conclusively deciphered this code, though some experts believe it could be a cipher or a shorthand, possibly used in espionage.